Okay, so I know it's been a while since I did one of these. I've been busy with work and some other stuff, but I just want to get into the Doom Patrol series of books, specifically the trades and hardcovers. If you're not familiar with the Doom Patrol, it's started out in the 60s, created by Arnold Drake and Bruno Premiani, I think I pronounced his name right. And the main members originally were Niles Calder, Dr. Niles Calder, Robot Man, who's Cliff Steele, who was a race car driver that was in an accident and had to get his human brain put into a robot body. Elasti-Girl, aka Rita Farr, who is now Elasti-Woman, but she can stretch or shrink to large degrees. She can become a giant or shrink down to the size of a paper clip. And Negative Man, aka Larry Trainer, who can release a negative energy spirit, for lack of a better term, for 60 seconds before it has to return to his body. This is the first one we'll talk about. It's the Silver Age Doom Patrol Omnibus. It collects all the Silver Age adventures of the team, going back to their original appearance in, let's just see here, My Greatest Adventure, number 80, if you can see that, against General Mortis. And you can see that a lot of the artwork is pretty good. I mean, especially for the era. It does get better as the issues go by. At one point, the series goes from My Greatest Adventure to the Doom Patrols, which is the name of the title, to reflect the team's status as becoming superstars of DC, for a little while at least, before they were canceled. And the funny thing about that is that when the book was canceled, the creators, or Arnold Drake at least, the writer, decided the best way to end the series was to kill off the Doom Patrol, which is kind of a unique thing to do, especially back then. And but in the meantime, before that happened, he created a lot of characters that are still mainstays of DC. The Brotherhood of Evil with the Brain and Monsieur Mala, and Madame Rouge, Beast Boy, who most people recognize from the Teen Titans. All these characters have had a long history with the DC Comics universe. So when Drake killed them off in the 60s, he had asked the fans in the issue if they wanted the team brought back, and eventually they were. But it wasn't until, I think, the late 1980s that they got brought back in another series by Paul Kupperberg. And this series chronicles the original adventures. In 1963, following the Golden Age of comics that gave us legendary heroes such as Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, came a very different comic book featuring a new breed of superheroes, a group of misfit loners, not blessed but cursed by fate with special powers. And again, they do encounter some villains such as General Mortis, the shape-shifting animal, vegetable mineral man, and alien overlord Gargax. The stories in this are pretty good, but they all seem to take the same approach. They also have the same plot. A new villain will show up. When it starts out originally, they introduce the Brotherhood of Data one by one almost, with the spotlights for each new villain. It was Gargax and Madame Rouge and all these guys. But not soon after, they do have other characters like the animal, vegetable mineral man that show up as villains. But originally, a lot of the new villains that are brought into the series end up becoming, or actually are, disguises for the Brotherhood of Evil. Just different names and different powers. I don't know why, but the Brotherhood of Evil are almost in the series as much as the Doom Patrol themselves. And like I said, they are kind of left in limbo, I guess, when the team gets killed off in the very final issue. Spoiler alert, by the way. They got resurrected I think by Marv Wolfman in the new Teen Titans series in the 80s, I guess it was. And before they got their own series back again. But that series went through, I think, 19 issues before Grant Morrison took over. And really turned the Doom Patrol on its head. Now, the main idea of the Doom Patrol is that they're the world's strangest superheroes. And Morrison took that and kind of ran with it. He created a bunch of new characters. Dorothy Spinner and Crazy Jane and a few others, and added them to the roster. When he came on with issue 19 of the second series. And basically you have the Doom Patrol, a lot of them dealing with like Robot Man wanting to commit suicide and stuff like this because he was tired of living in a robot body, and Crazy Jane is something like 60 odd split personalities, multiple personalities. And so Morrison generally had them even more strange and bizarre than they were originally, and pits them against characters like the Red Jack, who says he was the original Jack the Ripper, and the Butterfly Collector, as it were. But he ran with the title for a good long while. I've got 6 volumes of trade. The Painting of the Eight Paris is probably one of the more famous ones of them, which introduces the Brotherhood of Dada, which is like an updated version of the Brotherhood of Evil, but with a ton of new characters as well. And out of that you've got Mr. Nobody, Sleepwalk, The Fog, Frenzy, The Quiz. And over the course of the series, Morrison invented like other new villains as well, like the Scissor Men and the Mr. Evans, the Candlemaker, who was a invention of Dorothy Spinner's. Dorothy was could create characters out of her mind and bring them to life. And a lot of the characters that Kupperberg introduced or used were kind of reinvented. Negative Man became Rebus, who was a mismatch, if you will, of various different personalities that Negative Man had before, including a Negative Woman who had replaced him on the team briefly. And he introduced Flex Mentallo, which is the muscle man of the beach, who later comes back in the current Gerard Way miniseries, or not miniseries, sorry, the regular series. It feels like a miniseries at times because it's so late. Most issues are 2 to 3 months apart. But Morrison's was a much more mature look at the Doom Patrol. A lot of sex and cursing and bloodshed. Not so much sex, I guess, but discussions of sexuality. And you can see some of the artwork here by Richard Case. It can be very graphic at times, but ultimately it serves the story very well. And one thing that starts out here in Morrison's run is that the Chief, Niles Calder, who brought the Doom Patrol together and kind of helped them deal with their powers. He gave Robot Man his body. He created the bandages that keep Negative Man's radiation from leaking out and affecting other people. He became almost the villain of the entire series towards the end of the run here. And this was the last solid incarnation of the Doom Patrol for a while. I think Rachel Pollack took it over afterwards, after Morrison. And the series ended not too long after, I think maybe about a year or two after. And was rebooted a couple of times, once by John Byrne, and a couple other attempts were made, I think, until Keith Giffen brought back the team again for a fairly short-lived series. I think it only lasted about 22 issues. They only did 2 trades of it. They had a 3rd trade solicited, but it was canceled. But this one brings back the original team: Robot Man, Negative Man, the Chief, aka Niles Calder, and Elasti-Woman, who is now outgrown her husband, Steve Mento, or Steve Dayton, aka Mento. And Giffen posits the theory, or puts forward the idea, that Mento had forced Rita to marry him. Which, if you read the original stories, it's a pretty interesting idea, because at first she hates him, and then on a minute, 2 pages later, she falls in love with him. This was kind of an insane way to get married. But the stories in Giffen's run were the first ones that I really encountered with the Doom Patrol. I read a few other issues here and there, but this is the first time I had spent a lot of time reading them and getting to know the team history. And so you do get the return of the Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man. You do get the return of Crazy Jane. And one of Morrison's creations, Danny the Street, has become Danny the Brick, later Danny the Bungalow. And Mr. Nobody comes back as Mr. Somebody. A few new characters are created here with the Porcelain Assassin, or the Porcelain Doll. But overall, it's a pretty good run, and I wish DC Comics would print the 3rd trade just to complete the series. Reality is doomed. I apologize for my voice, by the way. I've got a flu coming on. And this is the current series now by Gerard Way, Nick Darrington, and Tamara Bonvillain. The first 6 issues are collected in Volume 1, brick by brick. And just look at the artwork in this thing. This is fantastic artwork and coloring here. And this brings back Robot Man and Negative Man. Rita isn't around, but she's replaced by another character called Casey Brink. That's her there. And I won't really spoil it for you if you haven't read it yet, but Casey has an unusual origin story. You can see Cliff with his brain out there, his human brain. But Gerard Way does introduce some new characters. And Danny the Street comes back as Danny the Ambulance this time. And the world's strangest superheroes are reborn. This is so aside from the fact that the book is usually running pretty late, it's on issue 8 now. And issues 9, 10, 11 have been resolicited because of the because it's been slowly coming out. But this is under the Young Animal imprint. I'll just read the back of it here. The world's strangest superheroes reborn. The atoms are buzzing. Daydreams crowd sentient streets. Generation arsonists unite. This is Doom Patrol, and the god of superheroes is bleeding on the floor. Casey Brink, a young EMT, is working the graveyard shift and dealing with the past so bizarre. She's not sure what's real and what's make-believe. With her partner Sam Reynolds by her side, she's about to blaze a path through the darkest alleys and blackest hours of the city, and the people she finds there will blow your mind. Robot Man, Crazy Jane, Negative Man, Flex Mentallo, another of Morrison's creations, by the way. Together, these incredible beings have redefined what it means to be a superhero and stretched the meta boundaries of comics beyond recognition. Now their power rests in eager new hands. Doomsday is upon you. And like I said, this collects the first 6 issues of the current series. So you can pick this one up in most of your local bookshops and the local comic book stores. But it's a really good read, a lot of fun, which is something that was kind of missing from Morrison's run, I noticed. There's a lot of high concept stuff in Morrison's run, but a lot of the humor that was in the original Doom Patrol comics is actually missing from a lot of Morrison's stuff. He gets more into the surreal and scary rather than the fun and the humor from the original the books. But overall, like I said, if you're interested in in the world's strangest heroes, that's the Doom Patrol, and you should check these out. They're all entertaining. This one, of course, fetches a heavy price because it's an omnibus, but it's $100 US and $130 in Canada, which is where I'm from. So it's quite a heavy price for this one, but it's a good read all the same. And Morrison's run is also collected in omnibus form, which is probably around the same price or a little bit more, I would say, because there's quite a few issues on this. And so you can pick up this now in local comic shops, and you can read all the series digitally on DCComics.com or Comixology, and enjoy the adventures of the Doom Patrol.